freedom of expression, of thought, of opinion and expression, is the right to seek information, to have diversity of information, to have access to official information, to build your own opinion as an individual, and to express it. But at the same time, it is a collective right where the people have the right to be informed, the people of a nation have the right to have alternative media, or the people of a nation have the right to express their culture, their language, their values, and their traditions. All of this is part of freedom of expression. When we normally speak about freedom of expression, people normally think about freedom of the press or the media only. I am now thinking on all forms, from art as an expression to media, from protection journalists to community alternative means of communication, from written media to internet as an alternative, and access to alternative communication where East Asia is actually at the vanguard in the world. So I truly believe there's a lot to be done to establish this as a right, a fully exercised right. I also think that there is somewhat of a setback in the world at this moment. Freedom of expression used to be understood before as the non-intervention of the state, as the lack of censorship, or as the protection of journalists. But now it has to be understood, like in all human rights, that the state has a proactive role, that the state has to be the guarantor, has to guarantee that every single person in its territory enjoys the full exercise of this right and the full exercise of freedom of expression in a proactive way. This means not only protecting the press, yes, and protecting the journalists, yes, but it also means generating diversity in the media. And in that sense, it means combating monopolies which have been growing in the world. The monopolies in the media is really affects the right to diversity, which is one of the basic principles in diversity and pluralism of opinions in freedom of expression. To build an opinion, the people of a country need to hear diverse approaches, diverse alternatives, and therefore monopolies are an obstacle to the full exercise of this right and have to be banned. Monopolies have been banned for economic reasons, for unlawful competition, but now they have to be banned from a freedom of expression approach as well. Also, it is very clear that we have to generate alternatives. I keep on mentioning the example of Argentina. I was in Argentina recently. I accompanied President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, the current president of Argentina. She drafted, at the initiative of civil society, and this was fantastic, they handed her a document of 21 principles they wanted to apply for a new telecommunications or broadcasting legislation. And she actually got a group of lawyers and presented a legislation that establishes the need to distribute the frequencies of radio and television in 3 equal parts, 33.3%, for community broadcasting, for commercial broadcasting, and for public service broadcasting. I would not go as far, they're going much further than I would go. I would not go as far as to establish percentages. I think each country is different. But I do like the principle, and I'm using this as an example, that every single telecommunications legislation in the world should guarantee the 3 sectors. The commercial sector, yes, but also the access of local communities, especially the most remote and impoverished communities, should have access to their own media. And the need to maintain public service broadcasting as a form of education, as a form of protection of the culture, the language, and the traditions of a country. Commercial broadcasting does not do that. And therefore, there has to be a national public broadcasting system that guarantees that for the future. These 3 areas of telecommunications are crucial. Also, we have been dealing with internet and the access to other alternative technology. I believe that freedom of expression, I always say that all democracies are measured by the respect for human rights. That is the measure of a democracy. But the most democratic of all human rights is freedom of expression. Only truly democratic societies can fully guarantee this right to all the people in their nation. And in this sense, the exercise of access to the web, to the internet, to the cyberspace, is probably one of the most democratic exercises that can be. I believe that access to communication is not only the exercise of freedom of expression or access to information, which every individual citizen has, but I also think it's a crucial necessity for any economic development plan. If we are to develop economically in all regions of the world, in every single village, we need those communities to have access to the internet. Otherwise, they will never be able to connect themselves to the national economic development programs or the international possibilities. And therefore, I insist that access to communication is not only a civil liberty and right today as freedom of expression, but it's also an economic right because it is part of the right to development. And I believe that all countries in the world, and that was one of the issues I'm planning to propose to the Human Rights Council, is that at a worldwide level we should make an effort of establishing access to communication, to electronic communication, first as one of the Millennium Goals, to be able to reach development goals. But secondly, I think it should be crucial that all states, or even at the UN at an international level, establish a fund and a research program that can enable countries to increase the access of the population to electronic communication means without the barriers of the economic cost that it has had up to now. I think that the more access we have to communication, the more democratic a society will become. And let me say finally that obviously there's pitfalls in this way, that ironically in the moment when we're talking about access to electronic communication, by the digital conversion of our means of communication, which gives an opportunity to many states to have a reserve of frequencies. And we're talking about democratizing the world and justice around the world. At the same time, we have seen a very preoccupying trend in some countries around the world to establish limitations to freedom of expression using criminal law or the legal framework. Some countries are interested in establishing defamation of religion, for instance, as a limitation. I believe, as a religious person that I am, I believe that we should establish a culture of respect, and we should all be very respectful to all religions. But I don't think respect can be gained by establishing a crime. I think religions are open to comment and to criticism like anything else. Defamation is a crime that exists only to protect persons, individuals, to protect the honor and the reputation of persons. So defamation of religion cannot be exercised to ban cartoons or to ban any comment. The same way, the defamation of the state cannot be used supposedly to protect state security, or the same way that you cannot use anti-terrorist legislation to limit freedom of expression. Anti-terrorist policies are correct and are legitimate of any state to protect themselves and their citizens. But not under that framework can politicians limit the criticism. And here let me finish by saying that I believe, and this is probably the most difficult point I'm putting across in the world, is that there should never be any limitation to open opinion and comments on public officials and public policies. So there should never be the possibility of a criminal action on defamation or even of a civil lawsuit on defamation when it is in reference to a public official in exercise of their work, of their public mandate. I believe that public office comes together with public scrutiny, and whoever accepts a public position understands he or she is under public scrutiny, which is called transparency. But also public scrutiny comes hand in hand with public criticism. And every citizen can freely criticize or comment or compliment, if they want, any functionary or any public policy without the risk of suffering a lawsuit. This is important, and I think this will be the true measure of a truly democratic society in the future. Thank you.